Get hot today.
Ooh.
We're gonna be like in
Gonna get hot, is it?
super hot again. Yeah.
Here it's cold and wet. Hi, Romy. How you doing? So.
I am about the same. Yeah, I'm pretty tired, but that's okay.
Sorry about that. Going through the wars, as they say. Let's get that light on. Might as well start by spending a few minutes trying to get a good motivation, pure motivation. Sheet of motivation. So if we can read the method, that Brahman thing, thanks. Or maybe we should start off with the refuge bodhicitta, actually, sorry. Sangye che dan soye chonam chanchu bandu tani kya suchi dagi chen soye be sonan ki rola penje sang robaro jo. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Essence encompassing all the Buddhas, originator of all the holy Dharma of scripture and realization, principle of all the Aryas intending virtue, in the glorious holy Gurus I take refuge. These Gurus bless my mind to become Dharma, Dharma to become the path, and the path to be without obstacles. Until I achieve Buddhahood, please bless me to be like youthful Nosang and Bodhisattva always crying, in correctly following the virtuous friend with pure thought and action, seeing whatever is done as pure, and accomplishing whatever is said and advised. Please bless me to see that this greatly meaningful body with freedoms and richnesses is difficult to find and easily perishes, that action and result are so profound, and that the sufferings of evil gone transmigratory beings are so difficult to bear. Therefore, please bless me to take refuge from the depths of my heart in the three rare sublime ones, to abandon negative karma and to accomplish virtue according to the Dharma. In dependence upon that, even if I achieve the mere higher rebirth of a deva or human, I will still have to experience suffering endlessly in samsara because of not having abandoned and being under the control of the disturbing thought obscurations. Therefore, please bless me to reflect well upon the way of circling in samsara and to continuously follow day and night the path of the three types of precious trainings, the principal method for becoming free from samsara. Independence upon that, even if I achieve mere liberation, since there is no sentient being of the six types who has not been my father and mother, please bless me to think I must fulfill their purpose and turn away from the lower happiness of nirvana. Then please bless me to generate precious bodhicitta by equalizing and exchanging myself with others, and to follow the conduct of the conqueror's sons, the six paramitas and so forth. Having trained my mind in the common path in that way, I will not be upset even if I have to experience the sufferings of samsara for a long time. However, please bless me to look at sentient beings with extraordinary, unbearable compassion and to enter the quick path of the Vajrayana teachings. Then please bless me to protect my vows and samaya more than my life, and to quickly accomplish the unified Vajradhara state in one brief lifetime of this degenerate time. May I not give rise to heresy for even a second in regard to the actions of the glorious Guru. May I see whatever actions are done as the stainless actions of a Buddha. With this devotion, may I receive the Guru's blessings in my heart. Magnificent and precious root Guru, please abide on the lotus and moon at my heart. Guide me with your great kindness and grant me the realizations of your holy body, speech, and mind. Should we just keep going with those other verses? Determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I will hold them most dear at all times. May I become like a wish-granting jewel, fulfilling all their wishes, and like a wish-granting tree, fulfilling all the hopes of transmigratory beings. For the sake of accomplishing the two purposes of all sentient beings without any sense of loss or concern, I will give away my body and likewise my enjoyments, such as food and clothing, and even all my virtues accumulated over the 3 times. By abandoning attachment and giving everything away, I will pass beyond sorrow, and my mind will achieve the non-abiding, sorrowless state, the state of omniscience. Since I will have to give up everything all at once when I die, it's best for me to give it away to sentient beings, because Buddhahood is attained in that way. As I have already given this body an impure aggregate to all beings to use for their pleasure, even if they always kill me, criticize me, beat me, and so forth, I will let them do whatever they like. From now on, whether they play games with my body or make it an object of laughter by ridiculing and making fun of it to hurt me, since I have already given this body of mine to sentient beings, why would I resist by protecting it and so forth? I will also use it to do any virtuous action that doesn't harm and benefits others. Whenever any sentient being encounters me, may it never be meaningless for them and always be meaningful. Whenever someone has an angry or devotional thought arise, just by looking at me, may that attitude alone become a cause that always accomplishes all the temporary and ultimate purposes of that being. Whenever others criticize me with their speech, harm me with their bodies, or likewise insult me behind my back, may all of them have the fortune to achieve great enlightenment. May I be a savior for those who lack a savior, a guide for all the beings who enter a road, a boat, a ship, and a bridge for those who want to cross the water. May I be an island for those who seek the safe shore of an island, a light for those who want a light, bedding for those who wish for bedding, and for all beings who desire a servant, may I become a servant of them all. May I be a wish-granting jewel and a wish-fulfilling vase, giving rise to whatever is desired, such as food and clothing, powerful mantra, accomplishing the actions of pacification, increase, and so forth, great medicine, curing every sickness, a wish-fulfilling tree, satisfying every need, and a wish-granting cow for all beings. Like the 4 great elements, the earth and so forth, and like the sky, may I always be a means of living in every way for the innumerable sentient beings. Likewise, may I be a means of living at all times and in all ways for the realms of sentient beings, equaling the extent of space, until they all attain the sorrowless state. As long as space remains, as long as transmigratory beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the suffering of transmigratory beings. Okay. Well, anyway, so sorry to have taken a break from the last class, and so this is the 3rd class, and there's going to be one we're going to have to make up for some time. Not quite sure when yet, but not this year, I doubt. Well, it could be, I don't know, we'll see. So where we are is on page 140 in the middle-length stage of the path, and it's the heading that says the causes of the fully ripened effects. So remember, there were these 8 particular attributes. You don't want to be just born as a human being, but there are these 8 fully ripened excellent qualities, as they're called, having an excellent lifespan and so on. So now it's talking about the cause of those. So we talked about those 8. Now this is talking about the causes you need to create in order to get to have those 8. So a lot of this doesn't need much explanation. Some of it does sometimes. Anyway, we'll see. Okay, So everybody's on the right page. It's going to be on it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So for the first one is the to do the excellent lifespan. So this has a okay. The first is not to harm any sentient being, and to cultivate an attitude of non-harm. So physically not harming, also not having the wish to harm. That's actually the commitment for having gone for refuge to the Dharma, isn't it? So that's something that we're trying to practice anyway. Furthermore, it says in well, apparently the discourse explaining 7 qualities. So the fact it says discourse means it must be a sutra. I didn't look, but anyway. I mean, usually, if it doesn't say sutra and translates it into English, then usually it's translated as discourse. I can't see. Kyllä kirjoina. Al gele tambone simjina. Mizavana sonu. Dijin sogin. So it doesn't mention at all in the text where this comes from anyway. So he must have done his research and discovered that's where it says it, and I think it must be a sutra. Being free by freeing beings bound for slaughter, and likewise helping through sustaining life. By turning away from harming animals, you will attain longevity. Out of caring for the sick as a healer and administering medicine and not harming creatures with stones or sticks, you will be without illness. Okay, so then for the second one, which is the excellent complexion. Anyway, so for the second one, offer light in the form of butter lamps and so forth, and new clothing. So the butter lamps, we of course don't have to be butter, but anyway. But we have this practice of offering light on the altar, one of the 7 set of 7 offerings, right? Like that, and also offering new clothing. So offering new clothing, presumably to like anyone, especially anybody who needs it, and also you can assume that if you're like offering it to one's guru and so on, holy beings, then there's more powerful cause for the result that you want. So furthermore, it says, by relying on having no anger and offering jewelry, you have a good physique. The result of having no jealousy is said to be good fortune. All about karma and its results, isn't it? Then the excellent lineage. The third is to overcome one's pride and like a servant to respect gurus and others. So actually, what it actually says is so it says to be like a servant to one's guru or gurus and so forth, and also to be like a servant of others. Just which is a little bit different, right? Not just to respect, in other words, really, not just to respect gurus and others, but to respect gurus and so forth and others. So gurus, I mean, just, I feel like saying again, holy beings, but holy beings. So yeah, I mean, people who might not be your gurus, but generally speaking, they're that kind of person. If you get my meaning, anyway. Great lamas and so on, even if they're not your teachers particularly. And anyway, so I'm reminded here of something that Lama Yeshe used to encourage us to do, and I particularly remember at the very end of the first Dharma celebration. So that would have been in 82, telling us that we should, like, I am a servant for others, like recite it like a mantra. I'm a servant for others. I'm a servant for others. Have that attitude. It's interesting actually, because I suppose it's quite good just to recite it like a mantra, but then also sometimes reciting like a mantra just means repeating without really thinking what it means. So to try to sort of repeat that to yourself as a way to cultivate that inner attitude. It's very, I think it's a very good idea. And anyway, that's something that he encourages us to do. I'm the servant of others. I'm the servant of others. That's actually quite nice, because if you think about it, if you think of the kind of karma you're creating by thinking of yourself as the servant of others, you can imagine that being wherever you're born. I mean, just imagine, like, probably none of us thought about Buddhism right from the very beginning, right, in this life. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe some of you did, I don't know, but I certainly didn't. What am I trying to say? It's like, so maybe well before the time comes in a future life, if we get the chance to keep going with the practices we're trying to do in this life, in future lives, if we don't bring, if we don't get the final result of the practice, enlightenment and so on, in this very lifetime, and things go well when we die and we get a chance to keep going with this path, it might be similar, not immediately making contact, maybe might take some time, some years, but to have that kind of attitude of wanting to serve others. And I just tend to think that just having that attitude is not enough, because if you're the servant of others, of course, it implies a certain attitude, of course, like to help, to be like a servant, but to be like a wise servant. So it's almost like, really, to be the servant of others means to be a bodhisattva, because it's not just a question of giving people what they want, but giving people what they need. So maybe you're the servant, whether you're an actual servant or not, but anyway, your attitude of being a servant is the one that is the one that's you want to be the one that helps others, whether you're actually a servant or whether actually you might be the president, the queen, the king, but your attitude is you're the servant of others, and not just giving them the nice things that they think that they want, they think that they need. Not they think they want, okay, they do want, they think what they think they need to be really happy, not just giving them what they think they want, but giving what they really need. So that's why, I'm talking about the combination of wisdom and compassion, method and wisdom, as they often say. So to be the servant, but also to be the wise servant of others. It's a great aspiration, anyway. Okay, so anyway, to respect gurus and others, to respect others like a servant. Then the fourth one. So this is to give the cause you need to create is to give food, clothing, and so on to those who ask for it. Then, so he says, as well as to benefit others without being asked, and to give to others who are suffering, as well as those who have fields of excellent qualities, but in need of requisites. So it's more like, okay, so giving, when people ask, giving them what they need, what they ask for, is giving them what they ask for, but particularly, if you can see that they need it. But then also even when not asked, if you can see a need, then giving. This is what this is saying, really. So even if they don't ask, so those who benefit you, those who help you, feel the benefit, like it must be like parents and so on. Also the ill, those who are ill, fields of quality. So, people who are, if it says fields of quality, this is the expression, it says fields of quality would be a field is something that you can, you plant seeds in and you get harvest. So a field of qualities would be somebody that you can develop qualities depending upon. So somebody who has qualities and that you can gain qualities from. So that people like that, they might be in need and they might not even ask you, but to give them anyway. The fifth is to cultivate the habit of abandoning the four non-virtues of speech. Okay, so that's to have respected words. The four non-virtues of speech, that's straightforward, isn't it? Six is to make aspirational prayers to accomplish all kinds of excellent qualities in future lives and to make offerings to three jewels, one's parents, Shravakas, Venerable, Abbots, Masters, Gurus. Okay, so what's this one? Renowned for being powerful. So in the explanation of the renown for being powerful, I think it talked about, like you being such a sort of preeminent example of giving that others are inspired by that. Something along those lines. I can't quite remember. But anyway, so the cause to make aspirational prayers, okay, is to make prayers to be able to accomplish all kinds of excellent qualities in future lives. That's one thing. Then to make offerings to the three jewels, not only three jewels, but also one's parents. Shravakas and Pratyabusa means not just bodhisattvas, but people who are following the Hinayana path. Shravakas, who are in English, that's usually, they usually say hearers. Pratyabuddhas, anyway, what do you call it? Solitary realizers, that's the one they usually call it. Solitary realizers. Then also abbots could be, your abbot in the case of somebody who takes ordination, then masters and gurus. Where it says masters, I think these are both going to be Vinaya terms. So in the Vinaya, depending upon the kind of level of ordination, you have to have an abbot. Then there's the preceptor, which is the Logan, Acharya in Sanskrit, which he's translated here as masters. I don't think it means like masters as in, like master and mistress kind of thing, not like that. And gurus, your gurus, especially. Okay, then the seventh is to rejoice in the excellent qualities of being a man. So we talked about this. We had a bit of a discussion about it. To see the disadvantages of being a woman and not rejoicing in them, to oppose the inclinations of those who wish to be born as a female, and to rescue those who have to be castrated. So don't get your dog castrated, and so forth. So anyway, we already had a bit of a discussion around this last week. Yeah. Then the eighth one. So this one is to be hale and hearty, I think, something like that. It says it's just describing this quality. Anyway, is to do with being strong, I think kind of strong and healthy, but also like cheerful, right? Is something that was mentioned. So the eighth is to the causes to practice. The eighth is to accomplish what others are unable to do. So this is mainly, I think, like when people are not able to, when others are not able to do it, then you do it, right? Something needs to be done. I mean, it could be somebody who's trying to do something and they can't do it, so you do it. Or if they can do it, if they've got help, then you help. Okay, the eighth is to accomplish what others are unable to do, to help them do what they can accomplish with your assistance. And also, so that's one thing then, and also to give food and drink to others, which, to give them strength, sustains them. And then it says, if these, so that's it really. That's the explanation of the eight, the causes of the eight qualities. Okay? Straightforward? Yeah. Then it talks about three conditions. He says three conditions anyway, three causes. If these eight causes are conjoined with the three conditions, their fully ripened effect will be outstanding. Okay, fully ripened effect. This often means, like the kind of rebirth, but doesn't always mean rebirth. It's kind of like what you'll experience as a result of what you've done is called the fully ripened result. I think more or less that's it. Okay, so these are the three causes. So let's see. The first cause or first condition, as he says, is the pure attitude. Second one, pure application. And the third one is the pure feel. So for the pure attitude, there's two aspects to that: relative to oneself and relative to others. And each of those has two aspects. So, okay, so pure attitude related to oneself. Then after that comes related to others. So related to oneself, there's two things. The two aspects of pure attitude related to oneself are to dedicate the virtues to unsurpassed enlightenment without hoping for their maturation in samsara, he adds. So it must be referring to some text that he's explaining, because what it actually says is that that these eight causes, the eight causes of the ripening results, as they call them, if they are so it's saying to make them really powerful, basically, right? To make them really powerful, it says to get effects which are outstanding. In other words, to make those causes very powerful, you need these three to accompany them by these three conditions. One of which is to practice them without hope of the ripening result. And what that means is to dedicate those causes, once you've created them, to unsurpassed enlightenment. Okay, so without hoping for their maturation, in other words, not when it comes to dedicating, not so that you'll get some kind of short-term result within psychic existence, but that it's gonna that when they ripen, when the result comes, it's going to be something that's going to help you towards enlightenment. It's not going to be just used up in some frivolous way. Okay, so that's it. So without hoping for their maturation means to dedicate the causes to unsurpassed enlightenment. And then they also need to be practiced with earnest sincerity. And what does that mean? To accomplish them, to practice those causes from the depths of one's heart, so sincerely, with earnest sincerity. Okay, then related to others, the two aspects of pure attitude related to others. So he says to give up jealousy, rivalry, and contempt. Others practicing the Dharma at a higher, equal, or lower level than you. Okay, and instead of that, it's okay to rejoice. Yeah, that's right. So, but when it says others practicing the Dharma, actually is this chutumba. So what this means is people who are practicing the same thing as you, practicing the same kind of thing as you, like fellow practitioners, basically. but amongst those, there'll be some that you see as being ahead of you, and so strong habit would be to be jealous of them. Those who are equal, to be competitive. People who you think of as being sort of like below you, behind you, then to be dismissive of them, and so yeah, contemptuous. So instead of that, rejoicing in what they're doing. Then the second one, this is also a bit more kind of needs to be. We need to change this a little bit, I think. So it says, even if you're not capable of that, to think of it many times as the ideal way to act. To think of it many times, that's kind of it. But let me read what Geshe Zopa says about this. You see, the thing is, where it says, where he says to think of it, it's kind of it, but it's the Tibetan word topa means to examine. So what how Geshe Zopa explains this, he says each day. So even if you're not actually able to do that, not able to do what? So if you're not able to actually rejoice, then each day, many times, try to think of it as something that you do want to do. To think about it, to really think about it, to examine it. Because anyway, what he says, each day, many times, examine it as something that you should practice, that needs to be practiced. Okay. And he says, in brackets after that, jealousy and so forth arise naturally due to habit, and it takes a lot of thought to change. So you're not able to really sincerely rejoice, but you recognize that not rejoicing isn't very helpful. And if you can rejoice, it's so powerful. So to just keep thinking of that, and then gradually, to be able to change. Okay. So anyway, it's more or less okay. Even if you're not capable of that, to think of it many times a day is the ideal way to act. In other words, to keep thinking about it, to think about how, it's that you should practice in that way. It's true, isn't it? Rejoicing can be quite difficult, can't it? Jealousy can come up quite easily. I think there are some things which are easier to. There are some things which are easier to rejoice about. People who, what is it? There seems to be some certain occasions where it's just particularly. Anyway. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to rejoice. Then the second condition is pure application. Pure application related to oneself, consists in practicing virtue for a long time, continuously and intensively. That's pretty straightforward. Not just to do it, once or twice without putting much thought into it, but just as that. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's just a bit distracting. So pure application. Okay, so we did that. So pure application related to others, in relation to others. Pure application related to others consists in bringing those who are not correctly cultivating virtue to do so, and praising those who are cultivating virtue so that they take delight in it, causing them to continue without interruption, and preventing them from abandoning. So that's also very straightforward, I think. Then the third condition is the pure field. So Geshe-Zopa says this is not really something separate from the first two. This is simply that both attitude and application are like a field in that they produce plenty of good fruit. So anyway, so that's what it says. So what does that mean? I think in a way that this third one reinforces the first two because of the fact that if you think about this thing, that those first two are a pure field in the way that Lama Tsongkhapa explains here, then it just reinforces your determination and your wish to practice those 8 causes in that way, with the pure pure attitude and pure application. So it's like, oh yeah, anyways, that does that make sense? Yeah. So then he says, having contemplated karma and its effects, how to engage in virtue and desist from non-virtue. So this is something that goes back to ages ago. I've made a note here that maybe page 119, we're on 142. So if you go back to page 119, you'll find that's where this is first mentioned. So I haven't gone through all of those other explanations now. Finally, we reach this one. Having contemplated karma and its effects, how to engage in virtue and desist from non-virtue. So you've got a general presentation, and then particularly how to purify by means of the 4 powers. God, it's bucketing down. Pouring. The Bodhisattva says, suffering arises from non-virtue. How can I surely be freed from it? It is appropriate day and night always to contemplate nothing but this. That's something to think about. Suffering arises from non-virtue. Why do you think it's appropriate day and night to think of this? I think how much impact this verse would have on you, and how much meaning it would, how meaningful it would be for you, would be completely dependent upon what that word suffering means to you, wouldn't it? What do you think the suffering means there? I mean, the thing is, we have 3 types of suffering, right? So which one is this talking about? Do you remember what the 3 types of suffering are? Looks like some of you do, for sure. So which one is he talking about here?
Is he talking about the suffering of suffering?
I should think so, yeah. Suffering arises from, because it says suffering arises from non-virtue. Suffering doesn't arise from virtue, does it? Well, he's not saying suffering arises from virtue. Anyway, yeah, the fact that he said from non-virtue, suffering arises from non-virtue, makes you think immediately, okay, well, non-virtue is this thing that Nagarjuna says. So anyway, Lama Tsongkhapa quotes that all suffering comes from non-virtue, and all happiness comes from virtue. Okay, so that's good, yeah. Suffering of suffering. But then it's interesting, actually, because suffering comes from non-virtue, but the whole of samsara is suffering. So the whole of samsara comes from non-virtue? That's what it says. Suffering arises from non-virtue. So because everything, I mean, of course, this is there's this small, the small capable being or small capacity, practices in common with a person of small capacity, and thinking about samsara in general as being in the nature of suffering is comes up in the next section, but still everybody's heard of it, right? We've all heard of this. The whole of samsara is nothing but suffering. So if the whole of samsara is nothing but suffering, that means the whole of samsara must come from non-virtue, mustn't it? even the what do you call it? I don't know, a nice sunset, which you enjoy, or good food, or good health, comes from non-virtue. Yeah. Anyway, so of course, we've got the suffering of suffering and the suffering of change, and there is a difference for sure. But anyway, that's quite interesting to think about. And also, I think it didn't come up in this text. Maybe not so far. It might come up later, but I know that you do come across the teaching. I think it's from Asanga, that all causes for being born in psychic existence, maybe to simplify it, it might not have been put exactly that way, but anyway, something like that. All causes for being born in psychic existence are non-virtue, because wherever you're born in samsara, it's nothing but suffering. So then he would include in that anything that you do which is the cause to be born, even as a human or as a a god, demigod, which means he's got a different idea of what happiness and suffering are, and a different idea of what virtue and non-virtue are, because he's not gonna say, oh, whether you take the life of others or whether you save the life of others, it's the same. He doesn't mean that. He's just making the point that even if you practice virtue in the sense of the causes for being born as a human, these 8 causes to be born not just as a human, but to be born as a human with all of those different qualities, special attributes, that that's good, but it's still the cause of suffering. Long term, it's still the cause of suffering. I mean, I'm sure you come across that idea, that it's amazing to be born as a human, but then there's also the suffering of being a human. So you don't really, you don't want to be born as a human. Really, it's terrible. Being born as a human is terrible. There's some amazing opportunities, and it's the basis for achieving enlightenment and so on. But so there's more like long term, short term. Long term, you definitely don't want to be born as a human. If we had the choice, much better not to be. I'm sure that everybody sitting here can relate to that. Yeah. Anyway, so suffering arises from non-virtue. How can I surely be free from that? So I think you can understand that on both levels. Suffering arises from non-virtue. So the suffering that we always think of as being suffering, the suffering of illness, suffering. I mean, so many different kinds of illness. Right? The suffering of getting old, which was coming up later. Well, it's coming up later, but some of us already got it. Anyway, so yeah, the suffering, I mean, also seems to be one of the main things, isn't it? Anyway, the suffering of having to live in a war situation, suffering of hunger, suffering of thirst, famine, and all of that suffering. So that's what we normally think of as suffering. So where does that come from? Non-virtue, by which he means, of course, like killing, stealing, lying, anyway, the 10 non-virtues. And if you vows, breaking vows. But then also, deeper level, okay, so suffering, the suffering of samsara also comes from, in other words, being in samsara, that comes from non-virtue in the sense of contaminated, what we would normally call contaminated virtue. In other words, just as long as what you're doing to create the causes of happiness is combined with ignorance, is still, in essence, what you're doing is creating the cause for more suffering. So how do I get out of that? It's appropriate day and night always to contemplate nothing but this. Okay. Then also the sage. So this must also be in the Bhagavad. In fact, it says which verses it is and which chapter it is, so that's good. Also, seventh chapter must be the enthusiasm, right? Joyous effort. The sage, meaning the Buddha, of course, taught that resolute faith, merpa, that's translated in so many different ways according to the context, but anyway, this is okay. Resolute faith anyway. The sage taught that resolute faith is the root of all virtue, meaning everything on the side of virtue. And the root of that is to meditate continuously on fully ripened effects. So, to cut the long story short, I think basically what this is saying is, well, anyway, if you keep learning about karma and like we were talking about the last time we met, like you got the Jataka stories and the Sutra of the Wise and Foolish, and there was this one that I was trying to remember the name of, that is produced by the what's it called, Tatantulku's people. So you read those again and again. Also the Wheel of Sharp Weapons, then just by continuously thinking about those and thinking, these stories come from the Buddha, and so we couldn't know these kinds of details, but if your mind is that clear, then you can see all these things and the connections, and so you're getting a deeper and deeper sense of certainty about cause and effect, karma and its results. So that builds up conviction, certainty, and that's what it's talking about, this faith. So how do you get that faith? By continuously thinking about the ripening results of karma. And if you have that, it's the root of everything on the side of virtue. He says it's the root of all virtues. If you look at, I don't know what the other translations are of this. I don't know if this is his own translation. I haven't looked at other translations, but anyway, everything on the side of virtue. So everything virtuous, everything good, really, everything good that could happen to you. I don't think it's talking about just the resolute faith is the root of all the causes for being born as a human god and so on, and all the good things that can happen to you as a human being and as a god and so on. But really, like the source of everything good. So this is really important, actually, to recognize that the link between, the connection between being careful with karma, avoiding the non-virtues, practicing the 10 virtues and so on, is the basis for everything, really. So just in and of itself, it's the cause of good things happening in psychic existence, but also then that makes creates the foundation for you to be able to practice the path to liberation and enlightenment. So it's the basis of that as well, Yeah, anyway, so it's the words of Shantideva, very powerful. Oh, in fact, so we have some explanation from Lama Tsongkhapa coming up. So so he's commenting on that verse, or maybe on both of the verses. So once you have come to understand virtuous and non-virtuous actions, which has just been explained, and their effects, you should meditate on this over and over again, because it is extremely difficult to gain certainty about, since it's very hidden. very hidden. I'm sure you're aware of the what that means. We talk about there's three types of thing really. There's one they call manifest. I think that's usually what they say. Manifest, hidden, very hidden. Manifest means things, to put simply, it's things that you can see with your own eyes and you can hear with your own ears. You don't need to use reasoning. You just see it directly, experience it directly. Then everything else is hidden, which means you need to use your brain to be able to understand, your intelligence, reasoning, basically reasoning. But amongst those, there are some where the reasoning is what we would normally probably understand as reasoning, like it must be like this because of this kind of thing, like it, I don't know, it's what would be an example? Well, I mean, in the Tibetan texts, the Buddhist texts, they often give you like things being impermanent, which means changing moment by moment because they depend upon cause and conditions. Also, the fact of things being empty. Empty means empty of being independent, existent. Why? Because they're dependent. So you don't need to just believe somebody in order to understand that things are empty, that they're impermanent. You can't see it with your eyes. You can't just perceive it directly right from the beginning, but you can get the understanding by really sort of thinking deeply about things. You can understand it. But then there are other things which are called very hidden, which would be like the details of karma, like specifically what karma must have been created for specifically this result to have happened. We wouldn't be able to work that out using logic and common sense. You do it by relying upon somebody else, and particularly relying upon the Buddha, and that which means you're relying upon somebody who they know what they're talking about, and wouldn't just say it to trick you. And so just like like they say, if you think about your birthday, you don't know when your birthday was. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody here that remembers being born, and that not only that, doesn't just remember being born, but remembers looking at their watch to see what day it is. Right? We don't have that. So how do you know when your birthday was? How do you know who your father was, who your mother was? I mean, of course, you can do these tests, which are fairly reliable. But anyway, you know what I mean? There are things that we just have no idea about, and yet we know. You say, of course, my birthday is on December, whatever it is. Of course, but you don't know. Well, you do know, because you've taken the word of people who know and would never deceive you, right? So it's a similar kind of thing, right? So so since it is very hidden, so difficult to get certainty about it in any other way than by just taking the Buddha's word for it. And it's a fact, I think, that just by you like with the Jataka stories, so these are the things that the Buddha said during his life about himself and about other people. He would be walking somewhere with his disciples, and something would happen, and the disciples would ask, how did this come about? And then he would say, oh, well, this person in a previous life was born as such and such a person, and then they did this, and that's why this happened to them, that kind of thing. You read those stories more and more, and it kind of like becomes stronger in you, this sense that everything everything happens because of having created the karma for it to happen. And as you're going through your life, you're creating karma for more things to happen in the future, that kind of thing. Anyway, so once you've come to understand virtues and non-virtuous actions and their effects, meditate on it again and again, because it's difficult to it gains certainty about it since it's very hidden. And so by thinking about it again and again, you will be able to gain that certainty. And that certainty is a really powerful thing in terms of, affecting how you lead your life, what you do with your life. Okay, so then the King of Concentration Sutra says, so I'll read out the way he translates it here. Then I'll read out the way it's said in Geshe Zopa's commentary. So he says, even if the moon and stars were to fall, the earth might, the earth were to collapse with its mountains and towns, and the heavenly realms were to utterly change, still no word you have spoken would be untrue. To be honest, when I read this, I thought there's something, I'm not quite sure about that. That's not how I've understood this verse before. So looking at the Tibetan, I really doubt it. And then it's sort of confirmed anyway by the translation in Geshe Zopa. So what it's saying, you see, is so this is all to do with gaining certainty, since it's very hidden. So it's to do with how you get to know something which is very hidden, which is you get to know it by depending upon the Buddha's word, right? So this is talking about the way in which the Buddha would never lie, right? No, so no word you've spoken would be true. So, and so what it's saying is, like all of this could happen. All of these, actually, let's look at it. Even if the moon and stars were to fall from their to fall from their place, actually, from where they are. I mean, is that possible? Is it possible for the moon and stars to fall from the sky? It's not possible, right? You think it's possible? Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. I mean, maybe maybe you do believe it. I shouldn't laugh at you if you believe it. But anyway, so what this is saying is, I mean, actually, that's impossible. But even if that were to happen, it's impossible. Even if it were to happen, the Buddha would never lie. It wouldn't be possible for the Buddha to lie. That might be possible, but it would be impossible for the Buddha to lie. It's not saying anything about if even if they were to fall from the sky, the Buddha wouldn't lie. It's saying even if that were possible, this would be impossible. It would still be impossible. That's actually impossible. But just supposing it to be impossible, supposedly it could be possible. This could never be possible for the Buddha to lie. Okay, yeah, Shana.
I was just thinking, because there's always talk about how the worlds come into being and then they go away and then they come back. So that's what I was thinking about when it said, even if the moon and stars were to fall. I mean, since everything is dependent, it could disappear for a while and then come back, but it wouldn't. That's what I was thinking of when you said that. That's why I was like, because they're always talking about how worlds come into being and then disappear.
You're right, actually. Yeah,
and then come back.
Is a good point. Is a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if that is going to happen eventually. So, in other words, actually, all of those things in the first 2 lines, they are going to happen eventually. But I wonder, though, if it's more like, so here we are on the planet Earth, and we've got all those stars up in the sky. Is it possible for all those stars to fall to the Earth, and also the moon and the sun to? And also, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit the way that they used to think of cosmology in those days, that probably the way that we used to in the West. I mean, I don't think anybody used to think of stars as being suns, right? It was just these little, things twinkling in the sky. But anyway, so that's a good point. That's a very good point, actually. Anyway, so I think more like, generally impossible. Can we say that? Generally, this is impossible. Generally, this is impossible to happen. I have to say generally now because, of course, now we've got Shana's take on it. Okay, so anyway, listen to this translation from Geshe Zopa, and so with Geshe Zopa, you see, I mean, when he taught the commentary that's been put into all those volumes of books commentating on the Chenmo, I mean, he taught in English, so his English was sometimes it could be a bit difficult to follow, but he taught in English. He taught in English some very, very complex subjects for many, many years. And he was a really great master, a great scholar. In his book, his autobiography, which is called something like a waking dream, something like that. He makes the point, actually, if he hadn't come to the States like he did quite early on, I mean, after 1959 when everybody was coming over, but anyway, quite early on, I'm not quite sure. It might have been the 60s even that he came over to the States. Quite interesting, his story. Yeah, so he mentioned, so if I hadn't done that, well, if I think about what my students have done, then I can well imagine I would have, reached quite a high level in the hierarchy. So one of his main students is the present Ganden throne holder, so the head of the Gelug tradition, right? And Gish Techchok, the one who came to LMB for a few years, he is also one of Gishi Ginzopa's students, and he became abbot of Sera Monastery and all that. So anyway, really, really amazing, really amazing. So what I'm trying to say is, I think that this is really worth taking seriously, this translation. So his translation, the translation in his text, anyway, though the moon and stars might fall from their places, though the earth with its mountains and cities might be destroyed, though the realm of the sky might be completely transformed, you could never utter a word that is untrue. So that's what it's saying anyway. So the essence anyway of that verse is the Buddha could never lie. There's absolutely no way the Buddha could ever lie, would ever lie, could ever lie. Of course, the Buddha did teach that things exist from their own side, which they don't. He taught some of his disciples that things exist inherently, right, from their own side. He taught all sorts of things like that. So does that mean that he lied? Shana's got an answer for that one too.
No, he just taught to the different levels of mind so that they could understand what they needed to do. It's like what you talked about with knowing what they need rather than what they want, knowing exactly what they need to get their level of mind to rise. As the way I interpreted it.
Yes. So did the Buddha teach that things are inherently existent? Things exist from their own side?
Wasn't there one of the schools that believes in a soul, like a everlasting? I think.
Say that, yeah, but for sure, everybody apart from the Prasangikas believes, based on the Buddha's teachings, that everything exists from its own side, right?
No, I thought they well, isn't that dependent arising is like emptiness? That's the.
Well, not all of the schools believe that because everything is dependent arising, everything must be empty.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know.
But the thing is, it's generally, this is debatable, of course, but the general understanding is that the Buddha taught that there are 4 systems of tenets, Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamatra, Madhyamika, and that they all represent what the Buddha taught. He didn't teach all of them to everybody. The main thing being that if he had taught Prasangika to everybody, because Prasangika, nothing exists from its own side and so on, that's actually the way things are, and that's what you have to realize in order to be free of psychic existence. For some people, that would be just too much. They would take it to mean that nothing exists at all. So he didn't teach that to everybody. So he taught, you have this general idea. The Buddha taught the 4 tenets. So what that means is that he taught that things exist from their own side, right? But things don't exist from their own side, do they? Right? Things don't exist from their own side. So what he said wasn't true. But what he taught them wasn't true. So it's a lie.
Conventional truth, ultimate truth.
Yes, and
Well, that wasn't that what that is like conventionally he was trying to protect people from falling into nihilism.
yeah.
And so he needed to say that to make
Yes.
sure that he didn't.
Yes. So he needed to tell lies. He needed to tell lies. It's okay to tell lies when you need to, right? Okay, anyway. Just messing with you. Okay. Okay, so next thing, anyway, let's go on. Oh, in fact, yeah, this is part of his commentary. Yeah. So he says, when explaining that verse, this is Geshe-Sopa again, though we cannot say it is impossible for the stars to fall out of the sky and so on, we can say it's impossible for the Buddha to ever say something which is not true. Okay, so that gives you an idea anyway. The point is the Buddha could never lie. That's what that verse is saying. You should thus develop conviction. So top page 143. You should thus develop conviction in the words of the Tathagata, the Buddha. Yeah, so and maintain it, he says. So you should thus practice with conviction in the words of the Tathagata, of the Buddha. Unless you've gained uncontrived certainty about them, you will not gain certainty that pleases the victors about any Dharma teachings. Yeah, no, I'm not quite sure what that means, except that, this, again, this is the foundation. That kind of conviction is the foundation of all the other practices. Some profess to have gained certainty about emptiness, yet do not have certainty about actions and their effects, nor even care about it, nor respect it, actually. They have arrived at a mistaken understanding of emptiness, for if they understood emptiness, they would see it to be the meaning of dependent arising, which would be helpful, which would help them in gaining certainty about actions and their results. So what this is saying is, some people think they've realized emptiness, but actually, the fact that they don't have any regard for karma, it's almost like they have no respect for it. They don't respect it. In other words, they don't consider it very important. They feel like they've got the main thing, which is emptiness. They don't need to really follow the teachings of karma. They can just do whatever they like because they know that everything's empty, so it doesn't matter. So the fact that they don't respect the teachings of karma, the fact that whatever understanding it is that they have or don't have, that doesn't reinforce their respect for karma, means that they don't really actually understand karma. Because what he's saying is emptiness, because what he's saying here is actually, if you understand emptiness, it's going to make your conviction about conventional truth, within which you have karma, much stronger. So I think maybe it doesn't mention it here, but anyway, you know, some of the Lamrim teachings, they mentioned that it might be further on in the text, I can't remember, that yeah, anyway, what it comes down to is there's a verse, I'm pretty sure it does actually come up later in the text, there's a verse from, I don't know, one of the great masters that basically says one who understands emptiness is very careful, which means careful with what they do. In other words, very careful with karma. The more you understand emptiness, the more careful you are with karma. Anyway, I think that's enough. From the same sutra, in other words, the King of Consultation Sutra, it says, like an illusion, a bubble, a mirage, or lightning, all phenomena are like the moon in water. Sentient beings who after death pass on to other lives are not perceived, are not seen. So like an illusion, like a bubble. This is the word chubur. It's interesting. I don't know how interesting, but anyway, I find it quite interesting. Gishingan Drapa is very clear that that this word actually means a ripple. So the water is going down the river, and when there's a stone, for a brief moment, that water changes shape, but it doesn't last. So that's what it means. So a ripple, actually the word is ripple, but most seem to explain it more like it as meaning bubble, a water bubble. So there must be difference. There is definitely a difference between like bubble and foam. Bubble, I think, would be more like this, the bubble that, you know, comes from like when you're boiling water, you know, sort of bubbles form and then they get bigger and bigger and then they burst when they get to the top. I guess something like that. But anyway, something very temporary, like an illusion, like a bubble, like a mirage, like lightning. So all phenomena are like the moon in water, like a water moon. Is there such thing as a water moon? Does that make sense to you if I say water moon? Does it make sense? A water moon. I had a hard time with this translating for Koban, the Koban Abbot in Shunyi.
You mean a you mean a reflection in the water? The moon in the water?
Yeah. So yeah. The thing is, we talk about I don't know, a dream, a dream monster or a dream person. I know, dream lady, dream man. We do, don't we? I mean, I'm not just talking about somebody who's your like ideal guy kind of doing like that's my dream kind of thing. But you know, like the one that you dream of, would you call that like a dream horse, a dream? What kind of things? Common things to dream of? I don't know, dream person, the dream father. You know, like your father has passed away, then you have a dream of them. So would you call that your dream father, a dream father? We would normally just say, I dreamt of my father last night, right? In my dream, my father said this, and in my dream, my father did that. Wouldn't so commonly say my dream father. I mean, you could say there's a difference between my dad and my dream dad. You could say that, couldn't you? Anyway, another big deal at this point. So like those, anyway, so like an illusion, so on, like a water moon, sentient beings who after death pass on to other lives are not perceived. Yet the actions they have done are not do not become non-existent. Are not non-existent. Do not become non-existent. For whether virtuous or non-virtuous, they cause their effects to ripen accordingly. This logically consistent approach is excellent, and though, and it's subtle and hard to see, and it's the victor's object of understanding. Sentient beings who pass on to other lives are not perceived. Well, so anyway, like an illusion, like an illusion. Let's just look at the first one, like an illusion. So you would have to say like an illusion, sentient beings who after living beings who after death pass on to other lives are not perceived. So what that means is like an illusion. So you've got the illusory. Everyone knows basically what this is supposed to mean. I don't know if anybody has ever actually seen a magician at work, a real magician. I'm not just talking about somebody who does things with sleight of hand, but somebody who actually is able to make things appear that aren't there, appear to you that aren't there. That's what this is talking about, right? So I mean, I can't even remember I don't want to spend time going into the whole story, but there's one very often told story of an illusion, which is of somebody who's sitting there talking, just talking with somebody who comes along who wants to sell them a horse. So then they get on the horse, and the horse rides off with them, and they can't stop the horse, and it goes and goes and goes and goes, and it ends up like so far away from home. And then they meet somebody, they start living together, have children, the children die, the wife dies, and then suddenly I can't remember, something happens, and he's back where he was at the very beginning, where the person was trying to sell the horse. And for him, it's like years and years and years have gone by. And so his wife is there and says, yeah, but your tea hasn't even gone cold. So the person who was selling the horse was actually a magician. Yeah, so that's, anyway, whether you believe such things are possible or not. There's even a story of this. I think some lama went to China, somewhere in China, and they wanted to embarrass him by creating an illusory palace for him to stay in, but of course then the palace would disappear, right? Because it wasn't a real palace, it's just an illusion. But he knew what was going on, so he actually transformed it so that it couldn't change, so it wouldn't disappear when the person who conjured it up tried to make it disappear again. So anyway, the idea is that something very convincing is very convincing. If you're not in on the story, then you would completely believe that it's true. So they often use the example, what do you call it, illusory dalang, horses and elephants. I don't know, for some reason that's the one that they always mentioned, horses and elephants. So these are things which are not just like, what do they call them? Those things like, it's where they make something look quite solid, but it's made of light. What do they call that? You don't know. You know what I'm talking about?
Like a holograph?
That's the one. Hologram. Yeah, that's the one. So it's not like that. It's completely convincing. Completely convincing. So the point is that it looks so much like there is a horse, elephant, etc. there, but it's not. You can never find one because there actually isn't one there. So just like that, the sentient beings who go from from life to life can't be found because they don't exist from their own side. They look like they exist from their own side, but you can't find a sentient being going from life to life that exists from its own side. Even though they don't exist from their own side, so they're not, they cannot be observed, they can't be perceived. Still, they the causes, the karma that they created, which also can't be found, the imprints of that, which also can't be found, go with them to the next life, and they experience the results, even if the result can't be found, but they still experience the result. So the actions they've done do not become non-existent. They don't exist as they appear, but they don't generally become totally non-existent. For whether virtuous or non-virtuous, they cause their effects to ripen accordingly. So this logically consistent approach is excellent and subtle, and it is the victor's object of understanding. So, on one level, it's also something that we can see, but very difficult. I mean, this is actually, in the teachings on emptiness, you often hear emptiness isn't what's difficult. Emptiness is relatively easy. What's difficult is to understand that even though things are empty, they still exist conventionally. That's what's difficult. Okay, so on one level, difficult to understand. That's difficult to understand. On another level, exactly what kind of causes lead to exactly what kind of results is difficult. Okay, let's. I hope we can get to the end of this bit. About a page more. Okay, so therefore you should generate certainty about cause and effect pertaining to both types of karma, and cut yourself off from the lower rebirths by continuously examining the three doors: your body, your actions of body, speech, and mind, day and night. To start out with little understanding and no skill in differentiating these cause and effects, and to remain carefree, careless regarding the three doors, only opens the door to the lower rebirth. That's fairly straightforward, I think. Then there is a quote from Sutra, Questions of the Naga King, Sagara Sutra. Sagara, I think, is ocean, Jnana Sagara, ocean of wisdom. Lord of Nagas, one Dharma of Bodhisattvas cuts off falling back down and being born in low rebirths. What is that one Dharma? It is to finally investigate with regard to virtues, qualities, thinking, how am I doing? Am I transgressing or maintaining them day and night? Transgressing, or anyway, so am I is what I'm doing something which is virtuous or non-virtuous, or what? So what's important about this, of course, is that this is not just for us beginners. Even if you're a bodhisattvas do that. That's the one thing that they do to make sure that they're not born in the lower realms. Having thought about it in this way, one turns away from faulty conduct. So this is expressed in the Satyaka chapter, I think, Dembabulyo. Satya means truth, so I think maybe Satyaka means the speaker of truth. O king, do not commit the act of killing. Life is very precious for every being. Therefore, those who wish to keep it long should not contemplate killing even deep down. So this seems to be saying, if you want a long life, don't kill, because all beings cherish their life. Like this, make a consistent habit of relying on the mind of restraint, your motivation not moving one bit towards misdeeds like the 10 non-virtues. Kamlungpa said to Puchungwa, Geshe. So this is the main disciple of Lama Atisha, taught that only actions and their effects were of vital importance. So obviously he put a lot of emphasis on karma. But nowadays, explaining this, listening to it and meditating on it are considered worthless. Is this just because it is difficult to practice? And Puchungwa says it is just so. Yes, so yes, that's it. Yeah, So nowadays, explaining this, listening to it and meditating on it. So maybe what it's saying is, the teachers tend not to teach it because it's just so difficult for them to understand. Maybe in many cases it would be, yeah. even though they understand it, difficult to explain, even if they explain it because the disciples can't understand. So, give them something simple. I don't know. It seems to be saying something like that. Understanding karma is very difficult. And I think we know that, right? Just going through this, it's like you get a lot of clarity, but there's still things that are quite puzzling, right? Still, it doesn't become straightforward. Then Dromtrompa said, follows of Atisha, recklessness is totally inappropriate. This dependent arising is subtle. Yeah, so you have to be very careful because everything, dependent arising, he's understanding dependent arising means, like everything you do is going to lead to results. You have to be very careful about the results you create the cause for. Don't just be careless, be very careful. Puchungwa said, in my old age, I'm at last turning to the Sutra of the Wise and Foolish. So, reflecting the point that it can take you a long time before you realize just how important this is. And Shara said, the Buddha taught that whatever errors and faults come about, they should not be blamed on an inauspicious place or on the construction of some building. It is simply that by doing this action in the past, I am born here now. Isn't that amazing? Because there are such things as, it doesn't say feng shui here, but anyway, that kind of thing. There are such things as, people out there who are trying to harm you. Spirits, negative energy and so on. There are those things. He's not saying none of those exist, but that's not the main one to blame. The main one to point the finger at is what you did in the past. This has happened to you. This is the result of my karma. This happened to me because I created the cause for it to happen to me. Yes, like it says in the mind training, put the blame for everything on one thing. In other words, don't blame everybody else and everything else. Everything really comes from your own self-cherishing mind. That's the main thing. So I think we'll stop there. So where we got to is the 4 opponent powers. So let's see. Few pages to go. But action-packed. So that'll be good anyway. That'll be good to get to next time we meet. So again, sorry not to have a date for that. The thing is that we try, which means Robbie tries to get everything, like very clear and fixed on the calendar, but there are certain things that we don't have much control over because, we have teachers, great lamas that we've invited. And so for them to be able to come depends upon having the visa. And so sometimes you don't get the visa or you don't get it when you want. There's all sorts of things that happen. And then sometimes, it depends upon His Holiness's schedule, whether they are available. And sometimes, His Holiness's schedule isn't made clear until maybe 2 or 3 months ahead of time. It's quite often like that. So that's why it's often quite difficult to, be precise very far in advance. Okay. Right, Romy? Yes, like that. But anyway, okay, so we're not going anywhere. We'll be back. We'll be back. Okay. So if we can dedicate with the usual dedication prayers, including for, great. Thank you. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. Due to the past, present, and future merits collected by me, and all the merits of the 3 times, collected by numberless Buddhas and numberless sentient beings, May bodhicitta be generated in the hearts of all the sentient beings of the 6 realms, and especially in the hearts of everybody in this world, including all the students, benefactors, and volunteers in the FPMT organization, and in particular, those who are connected with Land of Medicine Buddha, all the students, benefactors, and volunteers. Maybe we can include the staff, I think. May it be generated in the, I don't mean they haven't got bodhicitta. We're not saying that they don't have bodhicitta, right? It's just in case they haven't. Because also, anyway, you'll see later on it says, if they've already got it, including all the students, benefactors of the LB. May it be generated in the hearts of all those who rely upon me, all those for whom I have promised to pray, and all those whose names have been given to me, including on our dedication prayer list at Land of Medicine Buddha, and also all the other FPMT centers. May it be generated in my heart and in the hearts of all my family, the members, those who are living and those who have died. May the bodhicitta that has already been generated increase. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good conduct. Due to this virtue, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. Due to all the past, present, future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas and the numberless sentient beings which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. As long as any sentient being has not been liberated, may I abide in samsara to help them, even though I achieve highest enlightenment. By merely seeing, hearing, thinking about, or remembering me, as well as by touching me or talking to me, may all suffering instantly be pacified, and may there be happiness forever. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the 3 jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta, of the children of victorious ones, may the smile of reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Get well soon, Romy. And see you soon, I hope. Thanks very much. Bye. Should I end it for everybody?